Good morning, everybody. Hey, it's Britt. Welcome to this morning's review of Numbers. As promised, we are going to review Numbers this morning, and I figured I would do a recorded video because if I did a live video, there would probably be no one awake to watch it, so I would be by myself. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to record this. But good morning, everybody. I hope you are enjoying the study as much as I am. The amazing collection with Britt online. I don't know how many of you are still with me from the beginning when everyone joined the group. I can't really tell who's still with me on this journey. So if you are still doing the study, do me a favor and just do a heart in comments or a smiley face or raise your hand and say, me, I'm still here. Just curious who is still going at this with me because I love not being alone. Who wants to be alone? So we're in Numbers, and I'm going to do a quick review, and we're going to do a general Bible study review like we do every video, just to kind of refresh our memory and go back to the very beginning. It's always helpful to go back to the beginning and refresh. We're going to start with the general Bible review. Okay, how many books are in the Bible? 66. How many Old Testament? 39 and 27, right? 27 new, 39 old, 27 new. Okay, the Old Testament is Christ concealed, and the New Testament is Christ revealed, right? The Bible is a love letter to us, and it's written by over 40 human authors, but there's only one divine author, and that's the Holy Spirit, right? The Bible was written over 1,500 years. The Pentateuch, which is what we're in right now, is the first 5 books of the Bible. So it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, right? And who is the author of the Pentateuch? Moses. All right. Let's see. Okay, we're going to dive right into Numbers. Let's see here. Numbers. Okay, who knows the theme of Numbers? The book of unbelief, right? Book of unbelief. And what happened in this whole book? Wandering in the wilderness because of their unbelief, right? The Israelites just wandering for 40 years. Who is the author? Moses. And who are the main characters? Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. Awesome, guys. I hope you saw the PowerPoint, the Numbers PowerPoint that I posted the other day. Make sure to print those out. If you're a visual person like me, I need to, like, all forms of learning. I need audio, I need visual, I need kinesthetic, where I actually can touch and feel things. So unfortunately, I don't learn just one way. Like, I have to learn all sensory ways. I don't know if that's a word, but so here I printed out the PowerPoint and I have my numbers outline. And so I'm just going to review from our numbers outline. But before I do that, I love to just kind of refer to my nifty little Cliff Notebook, Know Your Bible. And so Exodus, we're going to just review that real quick. I'm sorry, Numbers. Let me turn the page. That would be helpful. All right, so the author is Moses. In 10 words or less, it says, the faithless Israelites wandered for 40 years in the wilderness of Sinai. And it says details. It talks about the details. So Numbers begins with a census. Hence the book's name's Numbers. So 14 months after Israelites escape Egypt, they number 603,000 men, not including the Levites. This mass amount of people that newly formed the nation of Israel begins a march of approximately 200 miles to the Promised Land, aka Canaan, a journey that will take decades to complete, which is about 40 years. The delay is God's punishment of the people who complain and grumble and whine and all those things about food, water, and rebel against Moses most of the time. And they hesitate to enter Canaan because of the powerful people already living there, the giants. Remember those? The giants they're so scared of. And God decrees that this entire generation will die in the wilderness, leaving the Promised Land to the new generation of more obedient Israelites. So that's the gist of Numbers. And let's see. So I have those notes in the PowerPoint Numbers presentation that I posted in the files. So check that out. Okay, so back to my quick outline. Okay, so author Moses, what happened? They wandered in the wilderness because of their unbelief. Hence the book theme, Book of Unbelief. Where? In Mount Sinai, the wilderness, Kadesh Barnea, in the plains of Moab. Y'all, this really helps me to review like when I speak it too, because it really sets all this info in my heart as well. And I hope it helps you, but it really helps me too. So it's kind of selfish. Sorry, side note. I love talking these things out. When you teach, you learn even more. Okay, so why did all this happen? Again, because the Israelites' unbelief and the rebellion against God. He would not let an entire generation into the promised land, and so they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Have you ever been in the wilderness, guys? Oh, I feel like I have quite a few times. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so you guys have this numbers outline that I'm doing right now, so you can follow along with me. God prepares the Israelites to enter the promised land. This is in chapters 1 through 10. The census was taken, and the census allowed the people to see the number of men fighting. Okay, 2, the banners identified each tribe. So when you read about the banners, it's good to know that they identified each tribe, and the tribes were organized as commanded by God. The trumpets that were talked about in Numbers 1 through 10 were a means of camp communication. So that's what the trumpets were for. So then they talk about the cleansing of the camp, where the priests were ordained, the tabernacle was cleansed, and the diseases were removed from camp. And then part C, it talks with communion with God, and that's when the Passover was celebrated. Okay, and so Numbers chapters 11 through 21, it goes and talks about how God prevented the Israelites from entering the promised land, or PL, aka PL. It's just, abbreviated. Why? Because they grumbled about food. They grumbled about their leadership. Moses, poor guy, trying his best, and they just had nothing but just mean things to say and complaining. Oh my gosh. They rebelled and refused to go into the promised land. And then it talks about in Kadesh Barnea, God punished the Israelites by making the rebellious generation wander in the wilderness for 40 years until the entire generation, except for Joshua and Caleb, the 2 good spies who had good news to bring back, had all died. And so despite all of that discipline and consequences and the plagues that happened because of lack of obedience, God provided their every need. But the Israelites couldn't see it. They were too busy whining and just being toots. Okay, so moving on. God prepared a new generation of Israelites to enter the promised land, and this happened in Numbers 22 through 26. So another census was taken, and the fighting of the men for the army decreased. They cleaned up camp, they basically cleaned house, and God reestablished communion with them. Okay, so that was the outline review. We're going to go straight into the workbook questions, because the workbook questions are thebomb.com. Okay, so day 1, I'm on page 108. I have lots of notes here. I hope you do too. Lots of highlighting. Whew, the theme, the book of unbelief, and the theme is wandering. So they wandering in the desert. Okay, I loved, and I underlined down here on the big picture, it says the picture of God and Moses in the book of Numbers could be a study in itself, which I totally agree. The complaining and the grumblingness, the faithfulness of the Israelite people, all of that was a part of that, and that was just fascinating to me. That just like the cycle just continued. God was faithful, but the Israelites couldn't see it. They continued to just be negative and just doubtful and faithless, and there were consequences, but God was there throughout it all. The primary story of the book, it says, is the movement of the Israelites to Mount Sinai into the promised land. And it says on page 108, I underlined, because of the people's lack of faith, the prize of the promised land was taken from the old generation, so they couldn't go in, and given to the new generation. But only after the old generation had died off. And so who was left? Joshua and Caleb, right? Remember that? Okay. Let's see. I underlined again, and I like the chart on page 109. But I love that it says Numbers is a very human book, a book of frustration, disappointment, complaint, accusation, backbiting, rebellion, and faithfulness abound. I feel like that's still us, present day. But you will also find liberal doses of confession, forgiveness, respect, loyalty, faith, and submission. The best news of the book, throughout it all, God never ceased working to carry out his plan. And he never ceased developing his people into what he wanted them to be and what he knew that they could become. I love that. You guys, if you have any comments about this homework, please comment below. This is not a Brittany show. Like, I don't want to just be the only one talking, but I understand that I'm kind of leading the group, so it is important that I provide some commentary. But if you guys can, please, so that I know that you are here with me, comment below anything that you have comments about with the homework. I would love that, please. Okay, so let's see. Love the quotes on the side. Page 109, our confidence in Christ does not make us lazy, negligent, or careless, but on the contrary, it makes us active in living righteous lives and doing good. There is no self-confidence to compare with this. I love that. Great quote. Okay. All right, let's see. Moving on, page 110. Let's see. As you read the book of Numbers, consider keeping a list of many positive and negative character traits as you find, often personally identifying with some of the traits that lived out on the pages that can be challenging and encouraging. So what I wrote for my homework to respond to this is just kind of how we are, his children, right? We're God's children. And there's a lot of parallel with us in the story of Numbers, I feel like. We cry and we whine and we throw tantrums just like the Israelites did. If we don't get what we want, we get disappointed. If we don't get it like that, we are quick to just complain. And God is just over here saying, you need to trust me. I got you. I have this. I see the bigger picture. My ways are not your ways. Your ways are not my ways. Like, he's just over there and he's just like, I know better, but you can't see it because you can't and I can. And I thought that was a perfect parallel. And God's just saying, you know what? You just need to trust me. And if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. And that's how we are with parenting, right? Totally similar analogy there. And I really thought that was pretty profound. Okay, let's see what else. Moving on to day 2. You guys, what stood out to you in day 2? Anybody want to comment down below? Please feel free. Please feel free. I have on page 111, I highlighted a couple of things. It says, I love the insight key phrase on the side. It says, God used the 40 years of wandering to turn a throng of ex-slaves into a nation ready to conquer and settle a land, which of course he's talking about the promised land. And then down below, the quote is just equally amazing. Don't doubt in the dark what God has revealed in the light. Boom. I love that. Love that. Okay. Let's see. Day 2. Let's see. So we talked about, I gotta, this is a struggle. I've got so many notes and I have my Bible open. I'm just like, where do I even begin? So again, in the very beginning, God is building an army in preparation for the first generation to enter the promised land. Let's see. I have Levites they were not counted in the census. That says that in chapter 1 of Numbers, the tribe of Levi is an exception. Don't register them. Don't count the tribe of Levi. Don't include them in the general census. Instead, appoint the Levites to be in charge of the dwelling of the testimony, overall furnishings and everything it's connected with. So they were given a responsibility to secure the dwelling of the testimony. And you can see that on chapter 1. Chapter 2, again, it talks about the banners identified in each tribe. Chapter 3, it talks about the Levites. Let's see, the Gershonites, the ites, the cellulites. Just kidding. Anyone with diseases was banned from camp. Chapter 6, moving on. Oh my gosh, you guys, just a side note. Numbers 6:24 through 26 is one of my all-time favorite scriptures. It's in one of my children's rooms, framed. It says, God bless you and keep you. God make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. God may God show his favor on you and give you peace. And I love that. Numbers 6:24 through 26. Okay, I'm going to get back to the workbook. Sorry about that. So let's see. We have on page 112, summarize very briefly what happened at Kadesh Barnea in chapter 13. State and report of the majority and the minority. Okay, so basically God sends Moses sends the 12 spies to give a report about what they see at the Promised Land. And you guys can read that in Numbers. And I'm trying to see what chapter that is in. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. Here we are. If you guys can see my notes, it's out of this world crazy. I have notes everywhere. As you can imagine, that's probably part of the reason why I sound like I'm everywhere. But God basically spoke to Moses and said that we need to send your men out and to scout the territory, right? To check out the Promised Land. And there were 12 spies. 10 went out and came. They thought that, well, they did say they saw giants, and basically I have written under here, they scouted out the land from the wilderness. They said they saw, let's see, the people who live there are fierce. This is Numbers 13, verse 27-ish, 329. They're fierce, their cities are huge and well fortified. Worse yet, we saw descendants of the giant Anak. Amalekites are spread out in the Negev. Hittites, Jebusites, and the Amorites hold on to the hill country. The Canaanites are established on the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan. So basically they're saying there's these huge giants in there, and we're afraid. I don't think we should do it. We should not, we shouldn't go. We shouldn't attack. And only Joshua and Caleb, the two good spies, bring back good reports. Caleb interrupted, called for silence before Moses and said, let's go and take up the land now. We can do it. I love Caleb. That is my kind of guy. I'm like, yes, I'm on his team. Let's do this. I love that. And then, but the others said, we can't attack the people. They're way stronger than we are. They spread scary rumors among the people of Israel. And then said the people as a whole, everyone was so big, too huge. They looked down on us like we were little grasshoppers, they said. So they were negative Nancy's, negative Neds, whatever you want to call them. So they're still being negative, and the story goes on. Poor Moses, the guy is just trying as hard as he can. But Caleb and Joshua were faithful and brave. And so they were the only ones to enter the Promised Land. So that, and so that was good. Okay, so back to the workbook. Let's see. Joshua and Caleb, God was with their, let's see. I love this quote on page 112. When a train goes through a tunnel and it gets dark, you don't just throw away the ticket and jump off, right? No, you sit still and you trust the engineer. And that is by Corrie ten Boom, the author of the Holocaust Survivor. So true. Like, that's what God was saying the whole time. Just trust me, even though you can't see. I know what's going on and what's ahead of you. But the Israelites' unbelief brought them unrest. So they just could not find rest or find trust in what God was trying to do for them, which was quite a shame. Okay. So let's see here. Page 114, moving on. So let's see. It's just a question to ask. God's discipline is never a pleasant experience. Can you point out a time when you sensed you were being disciplined by God? If so, what happened? I have quite a few examples of that. I'm not going to really go into it, but I was in my early 20s, for some reason, of course, I was a hot mess. In college, didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know anything. I was lukewarm in my relationship with the Lord, and so I had no moral compass, okay? So, quick story, just quick. I basically was a pathological liar. I was the person who basically told you what you wanted to hear because I didn't want to upset you or let you down. I just wanted everyone to like me, right? So I would lie, and it was the most ridiculous thing in hindsight. And of course, I'm ashamed of that, but I didn't know better. I did know better, but I wasn't, how do you say this? I just wasn't close with the Lord, and so I was just all over the place. But being caught in a lie never turns out good. And so I learned a hard lesson at one point in my life, which again I won't go into, but let's just say it involved making a really poor decision, ending up in the hospital, and almost losing my fiance. That was a big deal. But anyway, that's another side story. But yeah, from that point on, I realized, oh my gosh, I got to get my life straight. I need to stay focused on, truth, and forget all these things that I am not, and all these things that I'm trying to be. And so my life really kind of took a real quick turn fast. And sometimes that, God's consequences, or the, consequences that you go through, that's kind of how you learn, or it wakes you up, right? And so that definitely woke me up. Moving on. Numbers, day 3. Okay, so we're talking about, let's see, belief. I love the quote, is truth held in the mind, faith is fire in the heart. Let's see here. So many great questions. Okay, it says, again, Joshua and Caleb, the minority reporters, saw exactly the same thing in the promised land that the other 10 spies saw, but their response was different. Read their report and talk about what you contrast the two reports. And so again, Caleb says, let's go at once and occupy the land. Joshua says, this land is exceedingly good. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into the land and give it to us, the land flowing with milk and honey. And then the 10 grumpies, all they could focus on is the fruit there. But the people who live there were too strong, too big, too large. The cities are too fortified and too just impossible to get through. And so they were super negative Neds. And so I think that's a great visual of how your perspective changes everything, right? Your attitude just changes everything. I wrote down on the side, it says, God never said, follow me. Yes, this is a good one. God never says, take this happy pill, right? And everything is going to be easy, or everything is going to be okay. And you'll never be, challenged or hurt or disappointed or go through pain of any kind or trials. He just says, follow me and you will overcome. That verse that says, take heart, I have overcome the world. I mean, that's truly just an amazing verse, because it's true. Like, just being a Christian doesn't make everything okay. It doesn't make you not be confronted with challenges. It doesn't make you not be presented with things that are scary. God's just saying, I've overcome it. I'm just asking you to follow me and let me help you in this, right? That was just a side note that I wrote on the side. So I digress. Let's go on to page 117. Only 3 men of the older generation, Moses, Joshua, and Caleb, survived the end of the book. And that's the little think about it on the side of the page. I said on the question, it says, according to Numbers 14, 10 through 12, what were God's thoughts on the matter of what's going on? And I wrote, how long will these people reject me? All the things I've done for them, they continuously reject me. Let's see, it says, read Numbers 14, 22 and 14:36 and contrast the end result for the bearers of the 2 reports. So I wrote, those who have disobeyed will disinherit the promises I've made. And that's God speaking, obviously. And the bad news bearers will be struck down by plagues, and that really stinks, because I know I don't want to be struck down by a plague, that's for sure. That doesn't sound fun to me. Okay, let's see. Hebrews 11:6, going into the New Testament, says, without faith, it is impossible to please him. And God gives us all a Kadesh Barnea experience in which he asks us to trust him in the face of seemingly great odds and strong contrary opinions. Isn't that true? His desire is always to build our faith and provide opportunities for us to please him. I love that. And that's at the bottom of page 117. I just have it highlighted. It's so good. I wrote on the bottom, it says, we put our faith in insignificant things all the time. Things that we can see with our physical eyes. But God's asking us to put our faith in the things that are unseen. And we need to use our spiritual eyes, which is super true and super amazing. Okay, let's move on. On page 118, it says, review it. Joshua and Caleb are prominent players because they were willing to trust God in the face of great obstacles. And Moses did not go in to the promised land because of his unbelief and his rebellion. And we're going to talk about that very shortly. Let's see. Moving on to day 4. On 119, it talks about, and I underline it, says, just months before Moses was to realize his dream of completing the 40-year Exodus event by leading his people across the Jordan River into the land of Canaan, the PL, the Promised Land, he was disqualified. God told Moses that because of his own sin, he would not be allowed to complete the journey, and he would die before entering the land. Oh. It's just awful. Just awful and unfair. It's just, it took me a long time to grapple with that and to really wrap my brain around, Moses with all of his humility and his faithfulness and his just perseverance with dealing with all those crazy people for so long. He was denied access to the Promised Land. I just, that was hard for me. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you want to comment below and tell me what you think. But that was really hard. Moses spent 40 years of dealing with nonsense from these people. He was frustrated with them, but in the moment where God says to speak to the rock, and I have this written down and we can go over that. Moses in his rebellion, he didn't speak to the rock, he struck the rock. And that was the rebellion and an act of disobedience. And that's basically why Moses didn't enter the Promised Land. So let's see. So I want to find the chapter and verse where it talks about that. And I have written at the very bottom, why wasn't God gracious to Moses? I wrote, unsure. We don't really know why God didn't let Moses in. But I wrote, God's ways are higher than our ways, but he is always good, right? Amen. And that's, Isaiah 55:8, my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are my ways your ways. And so, I wrote that, but Moses, Moses had some issues. I think he was just tired, y'all. I mean, he's human, right? Oh, and I just lost my earring. He's human. And so I think, his attitude at the time, he was tired. He was skeptical at this point. It's been so long that he's been dealing with his people, and he just didn't know, honestly, how it was going to end. And I think he just got fed up. And that's what probably caused him to be disobedient, and dishonor God. But, I feel like also God knew his heart. And Moses knew God's heart. They were close, but he still was just human, Moses was. And so I think he probably was ready just to go see the Lord. I think, that's my thoughts about it. I don't know what you guys think. But anyway, so moving on. Page 121 in Numbers 27. That's where we're at. Let me fast forward here. 27. This is a long video, y'all. I'm so sorry. 27 talks about, do I have any notes on that? Chapter 27. I'm just going to go back to the workbook. It says, God again initiated a discussion with Moses about his disqualification from leading the people into the promised land. What does Moses' reaction to God say about him? I wrote, let the Lord appoint a new man over the Israelites who shall go before them, and that would be Joshua, to lead them out. He did as the Lord commanded, and hands Joshua basically the baton, and commissioned Joshua to lead the next generation. And then asks again, based on the two passages, what thoughts do you have on Moses, God, and yourself? So Moses, I wrote, he struggled, but he was an obedient man. He did act impulsively by striking the rock, and that did disqualify him. But he knew everything God did for him was for good, and he was ready to see him. He was tired, but he was happy Joshua was taking over. That's what I wrote. And then on God, it said, I just wrote, he means business when certainty it comes. Certainly when it comes to faithfulness. Sorry, I can barely read my own handwriting. And then yourself, how does it apply to yourself, and how do I see that? Basically, again, I just wrote, God's ways are not our ways. And basically, referring to the review at the bottom right-hand corner on page 121, it says, our notable feature is Moses' disqualification from entering the promised land, proving once again that God's ways are not our ways. Okay, day 5. Almost done, y'all. This is a long video. I'm so sorry. Okay, so it talks about on the left, in God's arrangement of the 12 tribes in the camp of Israel, he placed the nearest relatives closest to another. The tribes were descended from 4 different mothers, all about wives of Jacob. That was just an interesting fact that they put there. At the bottom, also the quote, it says, where you have absolute solutions, however, you have no need of faith. That's interesting. But let's see. Let's talk about the questions. Let's see. This is on page 124. What basic components are involved when you seek to know God's will? I wrote in my homework, faith, trust, availability, time, resourcing yourself, and being open to learn, having a learning spirit. I don't know how to explain that. So I circled the quote at the bottom. It says, just a reminder, it's easy to get caught up in finding God's will for which house to buy, what job to take, what gift to buy, and so on, that we get careless about his very clear and undebatable moral will. In reality, we make more daily decisions regarding his moral will than any other, and many times proper choices in the regard make other decisions clear. Plus, we have a guide the Israelites did not have, which is the Holy Spirit. Very good. Very good. I started that. That's amazing. Okay, y'all. So that is the gist of Numbers. I really enjoyed this book. In fact, I'll probably go back and read it again. I'm currently in Deuteronomy, and so I just like to backtrack so that it kind of reinforces what I just read as much as possible. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I definitely also want to go back and review what happened at Kadesh Barnea, and Moses striking the rock instead of speaking to the rock. I just find that fascinating. All right, guys, if you have any questions or comments, please comment below. This is a 34-minute video, and I do not like long videos, but sometimes it's necessary. A lot of material to cover, but I hope this video has helped you kind of read along and do the homework along with me. Remember, the homework is not required, but it is very helpful to help you just to review, which is the purpose of it, right? So I encourage you to do the homework as much as possible and review the outlines and all the little fun links and files that I include and upload on the group site. All right, guys, love y'all. Have a blessed day. It is chilly this weekend. I got my long sleeves on. I got a whole closet of sweatshirts that I have yet to wear, and I'm super excited to wear those because it's going to be cold this weekend. All right, love you. Bye.